Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
That's when I'll start to worry. And the other thing I was going to say is with this is I will never say that I am so fully strong in my stance that I'm going to be fine because I see King David, King Solomon, I see Judah, I see Samson, all of them. Their downfall was women and the beauty of a woman. And, and Yahweh takes away from us what really our downfall was. You look at Samson as an example. Samson had a problem with his eyes. When Samson met the non-Hebrew woman and his parents said, why don't you marry an Israelite? He said, well, this woman's pretty. And then that's why he was so attracted to Delilah. She was pretty. And that's why he went and slept with prostitutes, because they were pretty. What's the first thing they did when they punished him? They took out his eyes so he couldn't see. And then he really became a man. And this was a man that said in the scriptures had the spirit of Yahweh stirred up inside him. And then you look at Judah. He went to do some business in the city, and then he saw his daughter-in-law, who didn't know his daughter-in-law, on the side of the road. And, because of her beauty, he was distracted and slept with a prostitute. Not because he planned to. He wasn't planning. He was going to do business. And then, of course, we know King David, it wasn't all his fault. She shouldn't have been getting undressed in front of a window anyway. That's not modest. So women have a job. And that's a big problem today. Women don't know that. And I tell people, as bad as a knife and a fork is, and when it comes to committing suicide, more people will die from a high heel and lipstick than they will a knife and a fork any day.
Yeah, and it's not even just the way that women dress these days. It's also the bombardment of advertising, and not even just advertising, but book covers, video covers. Just the other day, of course, we've just passed Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Christine and I thought, let's get the video, the pianist, and the video Schindler's List, and let's reacquaint ourselves with these things and remember these things. I went into the video store, and I rarely go into a video store these days. I don't even watch television anymore. I don't watch commercial television. We choose what we will view. But I went into the video store to hire out these videos, and when I was walking around in there, I felt like I was in a pawn shop, Paul. I felt like I was in
I understand.
Pornographic.
I understand.
Incredible. And then Christine came with the kids to the door to see if I'd found the movie, if we were ready to go. I said, don't bring them in here. I don't want them to... Not only the pornography that was just sitting on the shelf, but also the horrific covers of horror DVDs. And I thought, my goodness, the last place I ever want my children to browse around is in a video store. It was just horrific. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. Please continue.
Well, taking it to the next level, I'm telling everyone, makeup is not healthy. It's very toxic. There's toxic chemicals in makeup. And when I say everyone, well, men were the first people who wore makeup, the Egyptian kings. But it's very toxic. There's swine in lipstick. So if you're wearing lipstick and you call yourself a believer, guess again. Or at least obedient, guess again. There's rat droppings in mascara. But there's a good book out called Toxic Beauty that discusses that. But I'm telling you, the high heel is one of the tricks of the enemy and one of the most toxic things. I just did an episode about this on my show, about high heels. It's not good. But forget about going to the video store. You can't even walk into a church today without seeing people dressed like... You compare them the way they're dressed today, and they look like a prostitute. A prostitute, you can't tell a difference. And that's the way they're dressed. You could take a picture of a prostitute on the street and a picture of the average woman dressed today and put them next to each other, and somebody wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And then it's a problem. It's crazy. And when I do that lecture and when I talk about that, some women get offended, and I say to you, women, if you are getting offended, you're the one that probably needs to hear this message the most.
I know what you're saying. I remember going to Australia's largest mega church, all right? Everyone probably knows what that is. Australia's largest mega church. I went there for, there was some function. I have a relative that goes there, and I had to go. We were served, was a tea and coffee afterwards, and a woman came up to us in what looked like a black cocktail dress, and her breasts were almost falling out of this thing, and I couldn't believe it. And my father looked at me and he said, "Are we in a church? What is this about? Good grief." And she was very, very kind, and she was serving us tea and coffee and that sort of thing. But I thought, my goodness, here we are in a church, and she may as well be a prostitute. Just like you say, it's incredible. But that's the world in which we live today. We don't understand modesty because it's been so, it's not really discussed, isn't it? I mean, the kind of clothing that young girls are pressured into wearing these days it's just scary.
Well, if there's something people don't want to hear about, I have to, my job telling people what to eat or what not to eat is hard enough. But if there's one thing they don't like to hear about other than what not to eat, it's how to dress. So you're always giving me a job here, but I tell people the problem comes down to, our passion for the scriptures, because the scriptures, we see what it says clearly, but people just don't understand, what obedience is here. And for example, the confusion we have in the scripture. I already discussed the Torah, how that's a misunderstood word in scripture, but the other misunderstood word in scripture is grace. Grace is not an excuse to keep living in sin. Grace is what is a gift to us to take away our sinful nature. But people just don't get that, and they don't realize that. And when you don't use the things that have been given us the right way, then you might as well add another book to the scriptures, the gospel of hypocrites. And that's what we have out there. And people are just, reading one thing but doing something else. And that's why I always say they're not set apart, and it's creating a problem. We need to be set apart. And, and we need to find with joy the grace that he's given us to take away that sinful nature. And we need to go back and look at that consistency on a daily basis. But people don't do that. They might read a scripture once and said they read it, if they at all. But, it's a big problem we have today.
I am very, very blessed, and I agree with what you're saying. Grace is not a license to sin. But just coming back to makeup, I am so blessed that my wife, she used to wear a lot of makeup. I have never liked makeup. I don't understand why men like it. I mean, who wants to kiss that stuff? But she respected that. She stopped wearing makeup. The skin on her face improved rapidly. And she doesn't need to wear makeup now because she doesn't wear makeup anymore, and her skin, the pores on her skin can breathe, and so she doesn't wear any sort of powder, she doesn't wear any sort of eye makeup, she doesn't wear lipstick, and I think she's beautiful.
Well, she sounds like a true woman of Yah, and, it's amazing. If people knew how toxic it was, maybe some people would wake up, but, most people today, they're just so naive when it comes to this stuff, and it just happened the last 100 years, at least in this country, in the United States. It's just the last 100 years people started to dress the way they dress and act the way they act. And I read a great book called The Curse of the 1920s, and what a great book. And this fellow who happens to be a Messianic brother, you can see him on YouTube. He had a great teaching about coverings and roles between men and women and so on, and that's what it comes down to. It comes down to our role, because we have to understand when it says in the scripture that a man should not wear what pertains to a woman. They weren't talking about pants. Men and women were wearing tunics back then. None of them were wearing pants. What they were talking about is roles. The men should not do what women's were designed, what their role was, and vice versa. And if you keep the roles as scripture says, you're not going to have the issue. And the Orthodox community today, the divorce rate is so much lower because they keep their roles. They're strong about their roles, and they understand the consequences of getting out of our roles. And, we could certainly take an example from them in that area.
Yeah, most certainly. So what was the name of that book? The Curse of the 1920s?
That's the name of the book, The Curse of 1920, I believe it is.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life Ministries.